Hi, folks. This is Don Meissner with the North Country Fishing Report, and I'm here with Linda today. And Linda, when we do this, we talk about how we're coming at this from two different directions. Before you and I were together, you never knew anything or thought anything about fishing.
No, it
And
was not something I would even randomly think about.
and there's a lot of people out there probably driving to work right now listening to this that don't know anything about fishing either. And we want the stuff that we talk about to appeal to them just as much as any of the avid fishermen out there. So this is why you and I are doing these things together, because you look at this from a whole different way, and now you're deeply involved in fishing. Even though you aren't fishing, you're not out there throwing a line. You're involved in all the tournaments that we do and all the planning that we do and so forth.
Yes.
And you get a chance to see it up close of how fishing affects people's lives.
That's true. And oftentimes there are terms that come up that I'm not aware of, I've never heard before. So there is a term that I heard this last week called slot limit, and I didn't understand what that was. And so I thought maybe you could explain it, because I'd never heard it before.
Well, I'll try to. A lot of times the different organizations like the DEC or whatever agencies in whatever state will put slot limits on different species of fish. And like you had said to me, it's probably very important that everybody out there that's fishing learns about their species that they're fishing for. They want to get as much information as they can about that species. But what slot limits are is, let's say, let's pick a species, for example. Say for a walleye or for a striped bass. Now, there are species that we really don't have right here. There are striped bass in the Hudson River that offer gigantic fish to a lot of people to be able to fish there without going out in the ocean. But they put a slot limit, being that you cannot keep any fish below a certain size or above a certain size. So they might put a slot limit of you can keep fish between 22 inches and let's say 32 inches. So if you catch a fish over 32 inches, you got to throw it back. And if you catch any of the smaller ones, we're used to that with most of our limits. You can't keep them before that. And there's a reason for this. And it's basically based on the physiology of that species. In other words, each species of fish matures sexually at a different time in their development. For example, sturgeon, it may take sturgeon 20 years before they're sexually productive. They can't reproduce until they get to be that old. And for example, in our waters, walleyed pike they're not mature until they're at least over 15 inches in length. Or let's say whatever the limit is. I'm not a biologist here, but so they don't let you keep them below that size on purpose. And because we want that new generation of fish to get to the point where they can start reproducing themselves and we can keep these species going. And the same thing is, if we apply it, let's say we were to apply a slot limit to bass, which we don't really have, but in my mind, it might be a good idea. Here we absolutely we worship these smallmouth bass in the St. Lawrence River because they've become so gigantic big. But we don't know how strong that species is going to be in maintaining itself. Well, if we keep fish, let's say we go out and catch this great-looking 4-pound smallmouth, and I think the worst thing we can do is kill that fish and take it home to eat it, even though that's legal. Because when these fish get that big, they've lived that long, they represent a strong genetic base for that species, and it's important that we don't kill them off. And that's why a lot of states have slot limits. Now, people out there I don't think they really need to worry about that right now in our area, but it's important that you understand the philosophy or the reason behind putting some of these regulations in place. And that's another thing that we have stressed so much, is the state has so many different regulations for so many different waters and so many species. It's really important that you inform yourself about this, or at least have a pamphlet with you. So if you go someplace that you're not used to fishing and that may have species that you haven't fished for before, you at least know whether you're breaking the law or not.
You know, Don, I've seen in some of the places where they sell lures and rods and reels, I've seen like booklets published that will give you information on a wide array of waters and a wide array of species. So that might be something for folks to look for.
And we do talk about that before, honey.
Yeah.
The DEC does put out a free pamphlet that's available whenever you buy your licenses. Any place that sells these licenses should be able to provide you with that pamphlet, and they're free. And the other thing is, most of this information can be obtained online. We know that the DEC has a lot of different websites or addresses.
dec.ny.gov.
Okay. So anyway, it's I guess the theme of this whole report is acquaint yourself with knowledge. It's so important. For it's just like in any other sport. There's all kinds of rules that go along with it, and you have to know them if you're going to enjoy the sport.
Exactly. Yes, be informed.
Until next time, folks, this is Don and Linda with the North Country Fishing Report.